Good evening, everyone, and welcome. We are so excited that you could join us tonight for Cultivating Joyous Resilience. I'm Alex Elliott, the Senior Manager of Events and Engagement for the Public Programs Department of California Institute of Integral Studies, a nonprofit university in San Francisco. Now let me first introduce our presenters, Anjuli Sherin and Monique LeSarre, and then we will get right to the conversation. Monique LeSarre is a proud San Francisco resident and prides herself on her community work. Dr. LeSarre is Executive Director of Rafiki Coalition, an agency that focuses on reducing health disparities and increasing wellness in San Francisco's Black community. She also teaches at California Institute of Integral Studies and gives workshops, trainings, and keynotes locally and nationally. Dr. LeSarre's teaching is fueled by Cornel West's quote, "Never forget that justice is what love looks like in public." Anjuli Sherin is a Pakistani American licensed marriage and family therapist specializing in trauma recovery, resilience building, and cultivating joy. She has 15 years of practice working with immigrant, South Asian, Middle Eastern, Muslim, and LGBTQI+ populations. Sherin received her BA in sociology and anthropology from Mary Washington University and her MA from CIIS. In addition to awards for academic excellence and community service, Sherin received the 2007 Emerging Leader Award from the E-Women Network and has been featured in O Magazine as a finalist for the O Magazine White House Leadership Project. And now it is my absolute pleasure to turn it over to Anjuli and Monique.
Thank you, everyone. Wonderful to meet you and see you not really out here in the beautiful CIS world. I am Monique, or Dr. Mo, and I want to first start us in a little bit of a meditation to start so that we can make sure that we're in the right space. So, in a moment, I'll invite you to pull up with your coffee or your tea or your cocktail. But for right now, I would love it if you want to ground yourselves and put things down. And maybe you're finding yourself in a chair or standing or sitting on the floor, or maybe you're multitasking at the stove. But just for a moment, find a comfortable place to stand or sit and take a breath together, breathing in through our nose and out through our mouth. And breathing in through our nose and out through our mouth. And on this last one, breathing in and holding. So breathing in, hold, 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 and breathe out with sound. Allowing yourself, if you feel like you are so inclined and you are right-handed, take your right hand. If you're left-handed, take your left-handed hand and just tap your heart a little bit. Just gonna tap our heart, opening our heart. Maybe we've closed it off from a long day, or it's just hard in the world right now. But just opening our hearts and being gentle with ourselves as we do. Imagining a rose in the center of our heart and imagining it blooming all the way to your back. So just breathing into that. And gently, if you feel like it, releasing your hand and allowing your rose to be in the center of your chest as we have this beautiful conversation tonight. I am so, so thrilled to be having a conversation, a fireside conversation. And now you can pull up if you want with your cocktail. You can get yourself in to relax, but I hope that you get a chance.
Mhm.
Please buy this book, Joyous Resilience, A Path to Individual Healing and Collective Thriving in an Inequitable World. We have Anjuli Sherin. And Anjali, I'm saying Anjali, I've heard Anjuli. Could you please pronounce your name how you want to be spoken about?
Thank you for asking. Yeah, I mean, either of those are fine. I say Anjali, but Anjuli has also been in use for a couple of decades, so I'm used to that one too. Thank you for asking.
Wonderful. So, welcome tonight to our conversation. And I wanted to first um, say this quote that I had just read in your book. In chapter one. It is from Rumi. You say, "Your task is not to seek for love, but merely to seek and find all the barriers within yourself that you have built against it." And that's from Rumi, 13th century Sufi poet. So I am imagining that this has been part of your journey about opening your heart and to find barriers where there has been maybe not opening or not blocking. And I wondered if you would mind just sharing with us a little bit about how you got to this work. And I know that you described yourself as a immigrant and now a citizen. But would you like to describe for yourself, for our audience, how you like to identify yourself and how you've gotten to this journey with heart opening and writing and just what has been your path here? Just a little bit about you, if that would be
Okay.
okay.
Thank you. Yeah, yeah, of course. Um, let's see. You've asked a lot in that question.
Of course.
Okay, going back in time. Um, I love that you started with a quote because I think that's the essence of the journey, right? Especially, I think, like either spiritual journey or personal transformational journey. Like at the essence, I think we want to feel love. I believe we are love. And
Hmm.
then there's all these ways in which hurts pile up and keep us from actually expressing that. And um, I'm going to combine the immigration journey and the therapeutic journey because they kind of
Hmm.
came close together. I left Pakistan at 18. My family still lives there. And so the first part of maybe the hurt and the joy, which is an interesting mix, was getting to come to this country, getting to go to college. It was a huge deal. Getting to begin life afresh independently, um, especially as a woman, especially as a woman of Pakistani origin. That was still, um, I think, like rare at that time, especially to come over alone. I think it's still a rare.
Hmm.
And at the same time, not realizing because you're 18, and at that point, it's all about freedom and you're starting a new life and all of that, the loneliness of migration on one's own and the loneliness of being separated from land, culture, and language. I mean, that's where I
Hmm.
grew up in family. Um, and I think also how young 18 is. I think 18 never really knows how young that is until later. And so some of the emotional development that hadn't happened at that time.
Hmm.
And probably a couple of years in, some of that began to show in a breakdown, as is pretty common, I think, at that age. It shows up in relationship. I think it can show up academically or it can show up in relationship or both. And for me, it was showing up in relationship as anxiety, depression, also anger.
Hmm.
And kind of this like acting out and like a dysregulation and not really knowing I didn't have those words even of what's going on.
Mm.
Um,
Yes.
I just knew I was unhappy, and I think it was easy to blame it outside on like this
Externalize.
person and that person.
Hmm.
Um, it also took time to figure out I needed help. I think some of that
Mm.
is also cultural, and I think that can be
Hmm.
across cultures, especially
Hmm.
yeah, especially with like immigrant populations, but also black any marginalized population. I think right along that side is the taboo against getting help. It's the learned. Um, it's not necessarily resilience, but I think it's the like
Protection.
fake
Protection.
protection. Yeah,
Hmm.
exactly. Like I don't need help. I need to do it on my own. Something is wrong if I
Hmm.
am feeling this way, and so I
Hmm.
need to hide it.
Hmm.
So my close friends from the time love to joke and remind me. I mean, it was so long ago that I actually have forgotten it. That when I was first told back then, have you considered therapy? Which not there was such a taboo and such a reaction of like, what are you
Hmm.
talking about? Why would I need that? I don't need just really hilarious given what happened later, and of
Hmm.
course,
Well, now you're a
my work there.
therapist, right?
But yes, and actually, how soon after? I
Hmm.
think it was maybe a couple of years later. I think
Hmm.
21, 22. I feel really lucky actually and privileged to have begun therapy that early because the moment I got in, it just felt like I don't know if you agree, Monique. Like I wish that these tools were there from the
Oh my
outset,
God,
starting
yes.
as children,
Oh my
right?
God, yes.
just even as simple as like, what are my emotions? Why am I feeling what I'm feeling?
What am I feeling? Wait,
What am I feeling?
am I crying because I'm sad, or am I actually angry or frustrated?
That's right.
As a
That's
woman,
right.
we're not
That's right.
allowed to express through anger often.
Anger. That's right. Exactly. And my presenting problem was I'm coming in pretty angry. And for me, the learning was underneath the anger are the softer feelings of hurt and pain and how
Mm,
to actually access and express them. And also underneath the anger are real needs and real boundaries. And
that's
I didn't
right.
even have the word boundaries back then. I mean,
What does that mean?
exactly.
Or what's a boundary and what do I like? Like, what do I
Yes.
like? What do I want? What do I need for myself?
Absolutely. And I think especially, yeah, as
Mhm.
women in this culture, I would say like, women of color, but I mean growing up in Pakistan under profound patriarchy, same over here, not really being asked. I mean, I was lucky growing up in a family where there was that permission and freedom as a woman to have choices, to leave and yet we were still steeped in
Mhm.
that patriarchy. And there was so much anger in me, I think, at that time around not being asked permission on my body. Um,
Mhm.
how do I want to dress? Where do I want to go?
Mhm.
Having my freedoms curtailed. So, but I had no knowledge of this. I just knew I'm angry. I'm having a hard time. My relationships are not really working out. I want romantic love, but boy, oh boy, it's not really, happening for me. And
Mhm.
thankfully, being able to turn the mirror back in and realize that there is a way, and that
Mhm.
way is about really learning and befriending this body, this
Mhm.
self, these emotions,
Mhm.
knowing myself and the time that that takes, and becoming, and this will I'll talk about later, is in the book, becoming the nurturer and becoming the protector that I needed. Um,
Mhm.
this was the tagline when I first began therapy. The person that I was working with had a tagline on their card. It said, "Come home to yourself," and I didn't know
Mhm.
what that meant either. And
Mhm.
I think I learned that, and that really was the answer.
Mhm.
That in therapy, you learn like come home to yourself, and especially either because of being an immigrant. I think you and I were talking about this earlier on the call, like how many of us are displaced from
Mhm.
land,
Mhm.
displaced from culture, displaced from tradition,
Mhm.
displaced from our bodies. So coming home to
Mhm.
ourselves, is a perfect tagline of come home to myself. There's a home in here where I have a
Mm.
friend, I have peace,
Mm.
and I get to have that wherever I go.
Mm.
And I am connected to those I love. I have a deep sense of belonging inside of me. And that became the crux, I think, of like the work that I wanted to do. And I
Mm.
think like the real spiritual and therapeutic work that there is to do. What does it mean to come home to ourselves? And then in collective healing, what does it mean to actually create a home where all of us feel at home? And it's not just some bodies that get to feel at home, right? So that makes that brings us to the start of the therapy and kind of
Mm.
how it all began.
Wow, there's so many different places I want to take this.
I know.
And I think one of the things that you literally just said, and is just about this this piece of um, being able to do something for ourselves versus
Yes.
doing it for outside of ourselves. So other people, you're angry, what's going on, what's happening, why are you da 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 da, right? The judgments that other people make. And then what does it mean to actually do this process for ourselves? Because a lot of women, not necessarily, you were saying, well, it's not working. So I'm doing this maybe for the relationship or because of these other things. And I'm thinking of myself, although certainly I got referred to therapy in college.
Yes.
And I went one time, and the lady tried to give me a book about toxic parenting. Um,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
and I said, oh, peace. I'm like, what does it have to do with my incompletes and having 19 library books overdrawn? How does that connect to toxic parenting? How does it connect that I cry every time I go to the registrar's office? How does it impact my mother's in the emergency room every other weekend? Like, how does that? But my sister's crying in the bed when I left home. I'm worried that my mother is she's using alcohol or marijuana or pills because she's so disembodied and so much pain. How does that have to do with toxic parenthood? You can tell me about that, lady, from a Western psychology framework. But you can't tell me that from my place, in my body, in my lived experience, right? Because yeah, maybe there were some boundaries that needed to be set, right? Everything that you just talked about, but there's also the other place of what I had to be able to do it for myself. And it took me, because often we learn, I think, through relationship, and certainly the therapeutic relationship is the thing that I learned from probably the most. And it's the place that I had with my mentor and my therapist for a long time, where I was actually able to do that relational work that I wasn't able to do with an ill parent and X, Y, and Z partner. Because you actually get to do that work. Hopefully, the therapist has done enough of their own work where they're not projecting, and they're actually able to see you in context, right? And so you're talking about some bodies don't have the capacity to be able to do the work for themselves, or maybe not the luxury of therapy, and that everyone has this different place and space, or at least that's what I'm interpreting in some of what you said, and that there's a privilege that comes with being able to do the therapy and do it early and learn ourselves and learn all of our feelings and everything. So I just wanted to, say thank you for the framing of this book. I really picked it up multiple times, and life has been so busy, but what I really wrote to myself was, uh, I am choosing joy. I am choosing joy, and I'm placing it at the center of my life. That was my affirmation after reading your intro.
I love that. I mean, you went right to the heart of right, that is
Yeah,
the center. How was that to
it's beautiful.
underline?
But of course I have the questions, right? So,
Yes.
me and the scholar. So I'm like, okay, so you say one, the power to feel, we want that we all have inside of ourselves three great forces. You say one is the power to feel deeply protected.
Mhm.
What's that?
Mhm.
How do we get there?
Mhm.
My first real foray into relation into therapy was coming out of an abusive, well, in being in an abusive relationship, and the therapist having to help us get out of it without killing each other. So what is protection, right? What is protection? And we're talking about that in a society where we have police sanctioned violence and lynching of black and brown people on
Yes.
television by the
Yes.
police. So what is that, deeply protected? So I'm going to say all three of these, and then maybe if
That's
you could
fine.
go into each one.
That's good.
And then two, the power to feel lovingly nurtured.
Yes.
Again, I laid out, some of my parenting challenges.
Yes.
Number three, the power to be joyously free to thrive. Wow, the power to be joyously free to thrive. That
Mhm.
those three ingredients make this, or you say unleash, like, woohoo, we're stuck,
That's
and now we're
right.
gonna get we're gonna get free. We're gonna unleash
Mhm.
resilience, and that resilience matters and joy matters. And so
Mhm.
that's the book, right? Joyously resilient. Those three things. So I wondered, could you share with us a little bit about how one gets to those three places?
Absolutely. And thank you. Thank you so much for bringing in like your story, right? And the nuances in your story, just like I bring in mine, and we realize like here we sit and there's so much complexity to
Mm-hmm.
what we brought into, sounds like both of us on our therapeutic journeys.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to go back to what you said about like being met by a therapist who goes, here is the way, versus you didn't describe so much the healthier therapeutic journey, but I imagine that was, like you said, more contextual, right? Going, what is the way? Who are you? What happened around protection? What happened around nurturance? How did it make sense? So
Mm-hmm.
I say that like everything else that's about to come out of my mouth, the thing behind it needs to be whoever's listening is context,
Yes.
right? That sure, there are
Mm.
certain
Yes.
things that we can build up inside of ourselves, like nurturance and like protection. But what it looks like, how it's going to look even at a certain stage in your life, right? You're
Mm-hmm.
describing about being in a relationship
Mm-hmm.
with violence. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, what did protection look like then as opposed to maybe
Mm-hmm.
some years later? And the
Now.
respect, and now,
Mm-hmm.
yes. And so the respect to be able to be heard in where we are. And I would
Mm-hmm.
say, so for both nurturance and protection, the first bottom line is what you and I were laughing about earlier, which is what do I feel? What do I need? I have needs. how do I begin to listen inside? So the first basis of protection is actually having that opportunity to be able to connect to what is happening for us, what are we feeling, the context of our experience, and at least the idea, if certainly not the lived reality for a lot of us, that it is your body. Even if society, systemic racism or patriarchy or capitalism have told you it's not your body and it needs to be fixed and it should be owned and shifted and changed. Just even that mirroring of like, actually, it is. It still is your body and it's telling you things, and it's telling you things usually through your sensations and your emotions. And if you can slow down and actually learn about those, and the caveat there is slowing down can probably feel very dangerous and hard when there has been so much pain and so much hurt and so much violation around that. So then we have to back up and go, what pace would you like to, what works for you to slow down and listen to your body? And that's protection. So it could be in a therapeutic relationship. It could be whoever's hearing this right now and how we approach our children, right? When we go like, it's your body, you get to say yes and no, hear the names of your body parts. When someone approaches you, this is how you say, yes, I want to know. I can start that early. It starts in how we speak to each other, right? We go, would you like to do this? Where are you at with that? Does the space work for you? All of those things are actually societal ways of, relational ways of practicing protection, as in you have a right to consent and you have a right to
You have a right to consent. And what was the second one?
boundaries, right? So
Oh,
consent and
I must have a problem with that one. I can't hear you. Like, what she say?
And again, and I would say to you, like, yes, and even the fact that you're saying, what did she say, right? You slow down and go, and how does it make sense that that is so in the lived reality of your life? And then again, where do we afford to respect and go, great, tell us how it makes sense and tell us what you would like to shift, if anything, around that. So the point is that at essence, though, it is your body, it is your life, it is your spirit. And I'll just say this, I'm like, and we do deserve to be taught that we have that yes, that no, that may be inside of us, and that it does deserve to be respected, even if it has not been, right? And that is the essence of protection. Over here, I turn to nurturance. I do believe, I mean, like, we don't come in as anything but love. We come in as pure essence. And I think we also come in wired, we will not survive without nurturance. We're wired for that. And that most loving part of us that at least can look at babies, right, and have that heart open, like, oh, I want to be there for you. But that's in us, even if it gets hidden. So the need to be nurtured, I would say, is also universal. And that kindness, that like attunement, all those things that go back to being with infants, right? Like, here I am, I look at you, I see you, I mirror back to you what you feel. When I see your needs, I'm there for you. We need that as babies. And the point is that we need that also as adults. And so that's what I mean about, like, when you say, I love you, I hear you, I want to listen to you, I see the smile on your face right now. Like, there's no way, I think, not to be touched by that. And how much that softens us. And how without that, how hard it is to be resilient. How hard it is to really do anything if I don't have permission to be cared for at the basic level. So that's what I mean by, like, it's in us, we need it. And at least for me, as I found my therapeutic journey, the way out, way back towards transformation or joy or even peace of mind is the cultivation of these two aspects, which I think of them as the healthy parents, like you said, the healthy parents, which when they respond to our most vulnerable self, right, like, which could be at the end of a hard week, and a lot of things have happened, and my heart is sore, and I have a lot of feelings. And at that point, if you're met with attunement, like, wow, yes, that's hard. I'm here for you. What do you? And the protector who might go, and especially I think in like any kind of community healing work, activist work, mothers, women, like members of the world, would go, and you too deserve to turn off the phone, or at least put it on vibrate if not that, and take that shower and have that meal and take that afternoon or that day because I want to protect you in
Mm-hmm.
order to be able to go back out and serve again. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So with these two in hand, I can actually stay resilient instead of vulnerable and deteriorating.
Oh,
Yes.
oh, I don't want to take you off your thought.
Last thing I was just going to say is like the joy aspect, like I
Mm-hmm.
feel like obviously when we're loved in this way, there is a relief, there is a peace. I mean, if your voice inside of your
Mm-hmm.
head is deeply kind and the voice inside of your head is kind of your ally and going, I'm going to support you in, speaking your truth or communicating or even just like going at your own pace.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to be, there is an innate alertness, aliveness, joy, happiness that comes back. And then there's another piece, which is with this and with some of the pain lessened, with some of the guilt and the shame, all of that kind of unwound, there is another level of joy that comes back, which is play, creativity, laughter.
Mm.
Um, and I think that's a really beautiful thing as well, right? That in this healing, and that those things are innately healing as well. That healing is not just talk therapy, going back to the Western health mindset,
Mm-hmm.
that healing can happen when the nurturer, even nurturing a therapist or your spiritual community or your community center goes, let's play music and break bread together and make art together and let's cry together and grieve in that
Mm.
way and let's dance together and grieve in
Yeah.
that way and let's make rituals and altars. These are ways that we can come back into aliveness too.
Yes.
And that's part of the magic and power we have
Yes.
that I think has been co-opted by
Yes. I,
pharmacology. Tell me.
mm-hmm. Absolutely. I'm seeing that they're giving us a high sign that we need to fix something.
Thank you.
But I want to hold the thought.
Let's pause right there then.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you so much. We are back live. Anjali, I was just getting very excited about the way that you talk in the book about. It feels very vibrant. So first of all, of course, I need to know your sign. For all of our CIS people, I'm like, she must be a fire or maybe a water sign, but
Good.
not an
Sagittarius
earth.
fire. I'm a Sag. Yes, lots of
Love it,
fire.
love it. One of my best friends is a Sag, so
Aw, what are
um,
you?
I am a Libra, air
Oh,
balance,
balance.
but I
Good.
have, I have Cancer and Leo in my chart, so I have a little fire in there,
Oh.
but not any earth. So bless us as we say thank you to all the tech people and all of the amazing people that set up all of this, because they keep us grounded. So the fire, right? So the fire, which also really makes me think about you with the anger, right? That you had more access to that. I had air, so I had access to ideas, and from the Cancer sign, the access of the water, the
Water.
feelings, like ugh. But
Yeah.
I wanted to bring in the concept of play and creativity into joy and resilience, because I really feel that to be playful, to be able to be, well, I guess let me just say back to what you were talking about, building altars, right?
Yes.
Building altars and having meals together and crying together. But there's something to me about being able to be creative
Mm-hmm.
that accesses deeply my spirit,
Mm-hmm.
and my joy.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if you have a creative practice that you do, or you just play, or if you have a child around you that you can play a lot.
I definitely have childlike people around me that I'm very, very lucky to be able to play in that way.
Mhm.
Because I have to say, it still surprises me. It shouldn't, but it does. How much grown-ups don't play or have no
Mm,
idea what to do when we talk about play. Besides, it sometimes feels like substance use. I mean, not that people can't
yes.
play mushrooms, psychedelics, and all of that,
Hmm.
but I think like that whole we go to the bar and we have alcohol, and that's the way that we play, or it's only then that we're allowed to
Hmm.
dance. That
Hmm.
kind of like being cut off. So yes, play,
Mm.
creativity. There's a few things I thought of. I think one what I love about creativity, and I would love to know more about what kind you
Hmm.
do, is going out of verbal. sometimes I think to nonverbal, right? So I think about like imagery and art and music and how they're just things that we feel, that experiences we have to transcend words.
Yes.
And it's through those mediums that it can get expressed, which I think we do need to be able to digest and integrate. And I think it's so wonderful to be able to go beyond. I have to put a linear word or a story, and actually this experience is nonlinear and it can come out through art. For me, Monique, the past 5 years, it's actually been dance. We grew up with like Bollywood and like the Bollywood movies. I don't know if you know
Of
them.
course I do. Are you a third line or are you in the front? That's what I want to know.
We didn't have lines. It was mostly like, the like four girls in the neighborhood, the sisters in the living room dancing, which is, I think, kind of universal actually, right? Because that happens here as well. But I grew up, I think, with like music and like dancing a lot more available without actually realizing that that was something. And then again, I came to the West and like, talk more about that, but it feels like all the emphasis on like academia and you're studying and you're getting your degrees and then you're learning and taking trainings and like all of very important stuff, but it didn't feel like there was a lot of room for like the other aspects of things that actually do produce aliveness and joy, and probably I would have really benefited from early on in my therapeutic journey. So yeah, in the past 5-6 years, just like coming back to dance, like any kind of dance, and realizing how much I can move out of me in one dance session, that again putting words to would take a long time, and just the sheer joy of being able to play, whether it's like partner dancing or on my own. So that's one. Yeah, many others, but that's definitely one.
I love that. I mean, I think about it as you're saying it, it's just like in sort of, if we go back, dial it back, and it's Black History Month, so I'm going to take a little
Please.
a little a detour just briefly. So, during enslavement, there was often in the South, in the U.S. context, there's often not a lot of access to being able any of those boundary things. First of all, so I wanted to say that concept that you talked about as protector. I have always thought of as the nurturer. So I never thought that the protector would tell you that, oh, you can turn something off, that's protection. I always viewed that as judgment or a boundary that you're not allowed to do something, right? And so I've always been the one that you don't tell me what not to do. So it's so interesting that you view it as a protector. So I'm going to have to really engage with that because I love it. I probably need to, it's almost like I feel like I want to harness some masculinity as a protector. And I've always thought of my protector as sort of more feminine power, but it feels like I want something that's like, I want to incorporate more masculine energy into myself that says, no, I can take care, you know what? No, I can take care of myself, or no, I'm taking care of myself, or you as me, little Monique, I'm going to take care of you. And I'm going to say, you know what? Put that phone away. You deserve it. You deserve
Yes.
it. You have permission. Because the feminine part of me is always like, I need to take care of these people. I got 10 people calling me right now that are in crisis, right?
Yeah.
And I need to address those crises. So I loved what you said about the protector piece. But when I dial it back into enslavement, right? I think about times where folks would steal away. I don't know if you ever got to read the book Beloved by Toni Morrison, one of our,
Long time ago. Yeah.
yes, 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 exactly, right? Exactly. And I think about African American psychology in a bit in two senses. The beloved character, which is often, it can express itself in a masculine kind of form too, but in the book it's very feminine. And in the book, it's like this deep need that can never be satiated, right? The need for love, the need for protection, the need for boundaries,
Yeah.
right? The need is just like, and then I think of Killmonger. So I don't know if you saw Black Panther.
No, I didn't actually.
Oh,
I have not seen it.
you have to see Black
Not been
Panther.
in the movies zone, but I will.
So if you see Black Panther, basically there's an African proverb that I think about when I think about Black Panther. There's a character that basically is there's the protagonist, which is sort of the one that you I think that's the one you like, right? And then the
Yeah.
antagonist is the hero, and the antagonist is the one that's like the anti-hero. So the anti-hero kind of comes in, and his name is Killmonger, and he comes in because he was rejected by the village, basically. And so the African proverb is the child will burn the village down if it has not received the love and care of the village, right? And so I think about those in sort of some of our what's happening in my community now. So you see like masculine or feminine rage is allowed, right, to a certain extent. You know, it's propagated, or but the neediness part is not allowed, so it's disavowed, right? And then I think back to I know I'm going everywhere, but I think back, if you're tracing me, I know you are as a therapist. We're really good at this part.
I've got you.
Exactly. I know you do. So going back to enslavement and thinking about our bodies not our own, and stealing away to have a moment to process, right? To have a moment to have spirit, to connect to joy, to connect to creativity. You know, and in Beloved, they talk about it as a circular process, there's a stop, basically. And so I'm thinking about it almost as what you expressed. It's like nobody was using alcohol or drugs or anything like that. There was the drum.
Yes.
And if there wasn't a drum, there was a stick. And if there wasn't a stick to pound, there was the body.
Yeah.
Or the voice, right? And we used all those things to help move that energy, that trauma out of us. Now we had those spaces and those places together where we could help hold and heal each other in just those moments, a day, a half a day, sometime when you could steal away to the forest or to the woods and have those moments to heal, right? Now we dial it forward and we're all up in the club and everybody's going out and you hear the music and you got the bass and you know, maybe you're drinking or you're smoking your blunt or whatever you're doing. You're not actually deep, and there can be in some of those places deep connection to healing.
Yes.
But there's also the disconnection of our body. And so I remember, you know, I would need to drink, you know, to be able to really dance and connect in my body. And I would feel like out on a Saturday night, like I had expressed everything and my body had, you know, I would, you
released.
know, you release, you catch the spirit, like spirit of alcohol comes and helps you, right? But I'm looking for the place that we can connect to that in our own body without those substances, like right, without the entheogens or the ways to play. Like how do you imagine, how do you support your clients in that space of healing where you don't need anything external to yourself and you can come in and feel spirit and cry and heal and dance and move it all through you. You know, what is your way of working with clients to get to that transcendent place of just like body healing and spirit healing? Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. It does. It does. I love, and I'm so happy you brought that context and story, right? Because yes, that's one of the places where it was most practiced and profoundly practiced. I think the first thing I think of is time. You know, what you're describing, like how you got that healing in the clubs and with the substances and you needed them. And that goes back to what we were talking about pacing and time and meeting somebody where they are. And so I think if you're in a place where it is a substance that's getting you there, I definitely, and this a little bit goes back to the protector piece you're talking about, so I'm going to knit them. You mentioned like the tone of voice you were using with yourself, right, around the phone, like don't do it, and then you shifted it to like don't do it, like you deserve this. And you were talking about the journey in the book, I say, between the critic and the protector. So the opposite of the protector is the critic who will actually put you down.
Yes.
Whereas the protector is there to actually uplift and go, you do need this boundary because I care for you, but I'm not going to put you down around it. And I'm going to tell you that you deserve it. And so to go back to the substances and the club and the dancing, we would first begin with like, we're not going into criticism. Why are you doing this? But we might start with going, why are you doing this? And I think we would have learned, like with your story, there's some awesome things you're getting out of this. You feel good afterwards and there's release. And actually there's memory in your body, ancestral memory of this is the way. Somewhere in there, this is the way. And then I think it's spacing and time about like tolerance, because if someone is only able to really feel it in that big alive way with the substance, usually it means first they just feel it, you know, in bite-sized pieces in session, right? So it's like, oh, you cried with me here and I didn't fall off my chair and you weren't judged and you survived. And you got to feel that aliveness right now with me
Mm.
without undue influence.
Yes.
And then maybe we smiled and we laughed together. And then maybe we went, tell me about your favorite song that you dance to at the clubs. And would you be willing to listen to it for one song, one repeat without the substance and actually just see what it
Mm-hmm.
feels like? I think it's also letting go of like, that's a different feeling, like aliveness when you're on substances, feeling aliveness in this way, it's different.
It is.
So building that tolerance for like,
Mm-hmm.
this is what aliveness can feel like and taste like, and I am safe in it. And so I can tolerate a little bit more of
Mm-hmm.
it. Um, all the way to like I run this Joy Circle, which I
Mm-hmm.
love. It's like it's a year-long program. We used to meet
Mm-hmm.
live before COVID, a group of people coming together. And part of the Joy Circle is that we would end usually with dancing. And
Mm-hmm.
that's a great example because on that journey, and it was a learning journey for me too, especially when we moved to Zoom,
Mm-hmm.
that we started to go, okay, we're going to dance at the end. And then I got some really good feedback from people going, I want to, but boy, it's a lot. It's a lot to be on video. I'm watching
Mm-hmm.
myself. I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was such a great lesson in pacing to be able to go, okay,
Mm-hmm.
how do we meet you where you are? You can turn off your video. You don't have to dance. Like you can watch those of us who are comfortable and maybe that will help you. And what I will say was beautiful is some of them are many years in, everybody dances now and they love it, and it's such a joy to me, and it didn't have to be. It's also really okay because they also know they can say no, they don't
Mm-hmm.
have to do it, they still belong. So
Mm-hmm.
that's back to the protector and the boundaries, right? Like
Mm.
facing time,
Mm.
building tolerance, and then
Mm.
doing it together.
Mm.
You don't learn to dance in that way alone. I think we can, but it's a whole other thing to be
Yes.
with. um
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah, just that touches me. That part about not having to be alone. I think some of us, with this COVID, right? I mean, I live alone, and I'm not trying to get anybody else sick, and so I'm trying to just stay in a bubble with my family and with my staff, and it's so hard to be alone and miss hugs.
It is so hard. It is so hard. Yes. Yes. How have you in your community cared for that? That is so real.
Mm.
It's one of the greatest pains of this
It really
time.
is. It
Yeah.
really is. Well, I have many different ways, of course, but
What are your joyful ways,
I
Monique?
think, well, right, right, right. What are the joyful ones? Well, right now, I was challenged with my kitchen. So my niece came over, and she helped me organize the cabinets because at the beginning of COVID, I started ordering food because my
Yeah.
grandparents and everything. You don't want to not have food. There's not gonna be food.
Toilet paper and food.
Toilet paper and food and paper towels,
That's
cleaning
right.
supplies. But I had my cabinets were like spilling out on my counter. So she came over and she organized it. And she helped me with that. And I let her help me with that. And she felt really good about helping me with that. And then what I then had been, now I'm in my kitchen a lot more. And during COVID, I've cultivated plants. So I have plants and orchids and yeah, mostly orchids. And so people are always like, well, they don't rebloom. I'm like, well, mine do rebloom.
Oh,
Um,
that's the
and
love.
yes, that's the love. And also because I sing to them. And so, right. So I'm in the kitchen in the morning and I start to sing to them. And there's just a thing that we call a zipper song. You take one word out and you put in another word. And it's like a prayer. And I'll just say it really briefly, but
Please.
it's come healing, come into my bones, come healing, make this body your home. And then you can say come, and joy is one of them, right?
Come
Come
joy
joy, come into my home, my bones or my
my
home,
bones.
my
Yes.
bones, like come into like joy, come into my bones, you know. peace come into my bones, peace come into my home, peace come into my city, peace come into my family, protection come into my family,
Mm.
health come into my family, health come into my bones. So I'm singing this and now my orchids are like popping off. They're like, woo, I want to bloom, I want to bloom, I want to bloom.
Absolutely. I mean, they are fed by our words. There's research on that, right? They're fed by, and they make music. I don't know if you know, but they have their own music.
I
It's
know. Well,
really
because I think sometimes they're talking to me and I've forgotten not listening. So I
cool.
have to get quiet at home now and I have to listen. I have to listen to myself. As you say in your book, you also have to have space to grieve. Like we don't want to do the spiritual bypassing, right? And so I wondered if you could talk about that and then because I know we have to start to wrap up for I know it's gone so fast.
Hey,
Um,
I'm having fun. You help me have fun. Get over my nervousness. Thank
Yay!
you. Yes.
So so mine is singing and plants, yours is dance. So we talked about joy. When you're feeling the grief, or in the times of COVID and how it's been so hard with isolation for many people, and I don't want to project what it's been like for you. But I imagine also you're seeing clients over Zoom, yeah?
Yes, everything moved to Zoom last March. The anniversary is coming up. It was incredible, right? Overnight. Yes.
Yeah. So how do you cultivate joy with your clients, during this COVID time, right? And then also, how do you allow for the spaces where you don't support them in spiritually bypassing? And what I mean by that is, this that I believe sort of in a Western psychology or the Western interpretation of Buddhism, the Western interpretation of Sufism, the Western interpretation of I guess I'll say spiritualness,
Spirituality, yeah.
spirituality, is that you don't feel bad. You're gonna just go sit up on a mountaintop, and it's all gonna be lovely, and it's going to, you're gonna be like, oh, people, oh, you poor people down there, you're just, you're lower vibration. I'm gonna just Weber, unfortunately, he, would judge and delineate people as lower vibrations, right, and higher vibrations. And
Yes.
so how do we shift that in this context, in a real enriched way, and say, you know what, there can be joy and suffering at the same time. Like, right, we've cried and we've laughed, you know?
Yes, yes. And I think that we laugh more freely because we know that we're free to cry and back and forth.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And I think back to that whole, I think there's also not only the hierarchy, but also this idea of like, why aren't you over it yet? Well, okay, maybe you can feel sad, but how long? And if it's
Mm-hmm.
going on for whatever a long time is, it depends on the person, then something is wrong,
Mm.
right?
Yes.
Yeah. And then again, maybe you're not doing your work or you're not doing enough, or if you're just working harder or healing faster,
Mm.
then you wouldn't feel this way.
Mm-hmm.
So in the book I talk about, and I think the premise is joy is in my point of view in here, aliveness. And aliveness is permission to feel all of you.
Mm-hmm.
So that is where the joy springs from, is that I am free to feel what I feel, when I feel, for how long I feel it.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no wrongness inside of it. It just is. And that's kind of like the water, it's like the water
Mm-hmm.
just gets to flow and flow freely. Um, and the joy is I have tools inside of it, not to
Mm-hmm.
cover it over, but to feel it again back at the base and in the ways and in the
Mm-hmm.
containers that don't let me be completely overwhelmed by it. And if I am overwhelmed by it, there's nothing wrong. It just means I probably need more of a container. I need more support. So
Right.
that, right? Like that there is no hierarchy. There's just, we all feel feelings. So that's just going to say that to whoever needs to hear it. Everybody feels feelings. If you have not felt grief in the past year, I mean, that's incredible, but I don't know anyone. That's not possible. And I wouldn't want not to feel grief. To go back
Mm.
to love, if you love deeply, you are signing up for grief at some point because you will
Love, yeah,
lose.
love is the mother of grief.
That's right. That's right. I love that. I never heard of it, but like I love that. Yes, love is the mother of grief. And so that is what we have attempted to do the best of our ability in my personal life and in the clients. Is like, how do we mother the profound grief that came out this
Mm.
past year, which
Yeah.
we are all still living and digesting. And, I mean, it's a
Mm-hmm.
year and yet the ripples are there, by I think first, like really validating. Like I think nothing hurts more than you're grieving and then you're told you should not, and
Woo,
it's not for you.
get over it.
That's the knife, you know.
Mm,
Yeah, and that is
mm,
what prolongs grief, and I think turns it into depression and
yes.
hopelessness and pessimism and all of those things. Instead of if it was met with, of course you feel this way because you love profoundly and you're
Mm,
empathic. And how do I hold a space where I give you permission
mm,
to just feel this and we
mm,
feel this together?
yeah.
Um, and what I found is that, like, also grief is not again meant to be felt alone. So we just keep going
Mm-mm.
back to that, right? Like, grief, especially, like, meant to be shared. Um, I read this beautiful quote once. I've never forgotten it. That it was from a father, I think, who lost like their like son at like maybe age 2 or 3, and he says, "Grief shatters you into a million pieces, and then you are meant to digest them just
Mm,
one by one." And so some of it is that, right? That we just made
mm-hmm.
time, session after
Mm-hmm.
session in our joy circle. Talk
Mm-hmm.
about oxymoron last year. I'm running a joy circle. And, you know, I can't tell you, Monique, right? Like circle after circle, the fires are burning our homes down. The sky is orange.
Mm, yes.
I mean, the very important protests and then like Black people dying, which has always been true. And yet it was very important to see and feel the tremendous pain of that. How do we say we're having a joy circle and this is happening? And I, I think what was important there was to go, we have to center our resilience. Like
Mm,
we have to have
yes.
some way of focusing on what's going to keep us alive, what's going to keep us going. Because if we don't, the alternative is so bleak. And also it's letting that
Mm,
pain, that like oppression win, right? That
yes.
like back to it's my body, it's my one lifetime. Maybe there'll be more, but I will not be cheated out of my laughter or my tears,
Mm, mm,
my rage or my capacity to share
mm,
my fears, my ability to dance with you and feel with you and eat and like
mm,
remember the land is still here. Like I will not be cheated out of that because capitalism and patriarchy and white supremacy and all of these things want me to
mm,
basically give up and die. Really, you bring down to it. Like you will either kill me, kill our people, or you will continuously teach us that there is not that much worth living for.
mm,
So we have to
yes.
center joy and resilience, but we have to include in that allowance to feel all that we feel and to feel it together.
Mm,
Um, those were some of the premises we did. And singing and plants, nature saved me, many of us. Yeah, all of that.
my heart is so full. It's
I
such a
see it.
wonderful opportunity to be with you. I know we're almost at the 8 o'clock time,
Yeah.
and I wanted to see if what else do you what is from your book or from your life or from spirit right now? What message do you have for the community listening and for our relatives?
Mm. I think first, just thank you for whoever is spending their Friday evening sitting here listening to our conversation. Thank you for being here. I think I would say to each of them, maybe take a moment right now and like reconnect back to the grounding and like
Mm,
what. Feel your feet on the floor. So much has been said, and often we're listening, like you said, when we're cooking or we're getting ready for
mm-hmm,
bed, probably some of us. And I just want to make sure that you do use the breath to, and maybe we can just do this together, right, Monique? Like taking a couple of
yeah.
those deep breaths in that Monique taught us and exhaling out through our mouths. Resetting our nervous system is actually just one conscious breath away. So, yeah, just a few deep breaths in, deep breaths out to actually bring your attention back now, if it hasn't been, with your own bodies. You sitting wherever you are, standing, your feet on the ground, your back supported. And then, yes, if it feels good, just like Monique did, like bring a hand of care to your heart and maybe even a hand to your belly or wherever it would feel good to your body. Just saying hello. I'm saying thank you for showing up here tonight and taking this time. And then maybe taking a moment and listening to like what brought you here tonight, like whatever that thread was, what was it that your heart, that rose was opening to, receiving? And then next few breaths that you take, I'm just going to ask that, like, the lessons, there were so many lessons and so much wisdom. And of course, each of you who's listening now or later, there's so much wisdom that you carry deep within yourself. And so just let those little sparkles of wisdom, the highlights, just kind of come to your heart, whatever it was that it took. And then what I want to remind you, I'm going to do it through the words of this beautiful poet, if it's okay, actually. So just staying there with your rose in your heart, and this is what came. So this is what must be wanting to be heard. So this is advice from Maria Sabina, who is a Mexican healer and a poet. And she says, heal yourself with the light of the sun and the rays of the moon, with the sound of the river and the waterfall, with the swaying of the sea and the fluttering of birds. Heal yourself with mint, neem, and eucalyptus. Sweeten with lavender, rosemary, and chamomile. Hug yourself with a cocoa bean and a hint of cinnamon. Put love in tea instead of sugar and drink it looking at the stars. Heal yourself with the kisses that the wind gives you, especially, this is my addition if you're alone. Heal yourself with the kisses that the wind gives you and the hugs of the rain. Stand strong with your bare feet on the ground and with everything that comes from it. Stand strong with your bare feet on the ground and with everything that comes from it. Be smarter every day by listening to your intuition. Jump, dance, sing so that you live happier. Heal yourself with beautiful love and always remember, you are the medicine. You are the medicine. You are the medicine. We are the medicine. It's inside of us. We come to it together.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So beautiful.
This was so lovely. I want to keep talking to you.
I know.
Like, what have you done? You've like totally taken away my nerves. You're the nurturer and the protector.
Very good at doing it for others. Now I will internalize doing it for myself even differently.
Yes, I support you in that.
Thank you. I want to add this saying, we are the answer to the ancestors' prayers.
Yes.
To everything that you just said. It was so beautiful. I know that I am going to tell, who am I telling? I am telling somebody to bring Alex back.
Are you? Or maybe, I think maybe we're going to the questions.
Oh, I think this is where we say bring Alex back, no?
No, that's at the end.
Oh, good. Okay.
We're just going to support each other.
Okay, awesome.
I think it's just the Q&A at the bottom.
Oh, fabulous. Thank you. You were a better student than I was.
No comparing.
So thank you. So I want to bring a question from Christina. She said the introduction of this book moved me to tears repeatedly. Will you talk more about how this book can be helpful during the stressful time we're in?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for asking. Yes, so, we had a wonderful conversation. We riffed on all of these different topics. What I want to make clear is that the book provides it's simple and it's really deep at the same time. So just even because it's simple, it's like it takes time to work it, but it provides a path for each of you during the pandemic to get clear on where you've been feeling really vulnerable, wherever it is. B, get clear on where inadvertently you might have been doing that criticism thing we talked about in the talk, or the self-neglect without judgment. It's just that we all do it, right? We get into caretaking for others, dissociating, or criticizing and judgment, comparing, and that makes us really debilitated. And this is a time where none of us needs more debilitation. We need that loving parentage. So majority of the book will then help you walk through building that beautiful nurturer we've been talking about tonight, building that wonderful protector we've been talking about, which will help you feel more resilient, help you be inside of whatever the pandemic is making you feel vulnerable about, help you actually feel like you're buffered and can rise, and also ask for help. Asking for help is a key trait of the protector. The nurturer goes, oh my gosh, you need help. Of course, understandable. The protector goes, great. Have your cousin, I can't remember who it was, come over and help you with those cabinets. You don't have to do it alone, or, reach out for help, have a conversation. So the book, I hope, will help you see where you're stuck, walk yourself through and build yourself up. And the last half of the book is really about practices. And where one of my teachers would say, we are what we practice, and we're always practicing something. And this book tells you,
Mm-hmm.
let's have those practices be geared towards your joy and your resilience. And that, I think, can be really useful when we're feeling kind of lost during this time, and like, what am I practicing? How do I go about keeping myself in a structure, in a routine, cared for, as I'm living this strange life. The last half of the book will really help with that as well. Finally, as we talked about here, the book holds context. And I think that can be really healing, that it's not centering your pandemic experience on, what are you doing right or wrong? And it's talking about the larger system we're inside of and the world we're inside of, where, there's just so much happening politically, and climate change, systemic racism, and so much growth. And it depends on if you're a frontline worker, are you employed or unemployed? And so I hope that the book also witnesses you where you are and lets you know and feel that you are seen. And then these are the ways out.
Absolutely. Well, you kind of started to talk about this, so I want to get the next question. It says, question from the BB, whatever that is. Will you talk about how to activate your own nurturer, protector, or soul self? So you started to talk about it a little bit. You said ask for help.
Mm.
That's what I heard you say. Ask for help. So
Yes,
how do you activate it?
that's right. So how do you activate it? That's the big question. In the book, what you'll see is what I guide people through is a lot of what I actually do in the individual therapy session. And I think it's the base for like much of somatic therapy or creative arts therapy or experiential therapy. So the book will walk you through, for example, first, just an idea of what the nurturer is and the common traits of a nurturer. Things I've already mentioned, things like attunement,
Mm-hmm.
knowing what we feel, loving kindness, acceptance. And then the book walks you through, and this you might enjoy, Monique, because it's kind of creative and it's art based. It's like actually creating a vision, even a collage, a drawing, like, looking in books, listening to music, like creating a template of what would be that ideal nurturer.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that's even taken off from a figure in your life. Maybe it was a grandparent, maybe it was a teacher, maybe it's a pet who embodies this particular kind of I just love you unconditionally,
Mm-hmm.
a spiritual figure. So it allows you to start to build and pull on your life experience to create this template. And then the book will guide you through practicing with that template.
Mm-hmm.
I should also say the book has many guided meditations to help deepen this
Mm-hmm.
wiring, and those meditations are available for free, whether you have the book or not. By the way, they're available on my website, which I think will be on the YouTube link
Mm-hmm.
for free. And those meditations teach you, okay, you're going to now meet your nurturer, and they're going to begin to sit with you and listen to you, and you're going to begin to rewire yourself to this nurturance and attunement. With the protector, same thing. We create a template, and there we're practicing a bit more. So there's practices in the book around consent, for example.
Mm-hmm.
So slowing down and going, in this situation where I'm feeling a bit angry or resentful, that's usually a good clue that you're in need of your protector. Because anger and resentment generally means someone has crossed a boundary. What is a boundary? Something you didn't like that you needed. So, like, I'm so annoyed that people keep asking me for to do more work on this one project, and but then I keep on just doing it, even though, because I don't feel like I can actually say anything. There's a need buried in it. Maybe I need fewer projects, maybe I need to have someone give me assistance on it, maybe I'm overwhelmed and I need to have it based. So the book helps you break down what's underneath that resentment, what are the needs that are buried in it, and then to begin to practice how to articulate that into this is what I need, and having that inner template of a protector begin to speak that and verbalize that for you and with you. And then finally, you grow into taking that action in real life.
Mm-hmm.
I should also say, obviously, if you are working with a therapist or a healer or any kind of counselor, it's a great adjunct, because some of this work, if you find yourself getting stuck, again, it's okay. It might mean you've reached your edge on your own, or even with the help of a book, and now you need another person to hold this with you and to practice, like you and I were talking about. Same for the soul self, same for the resilient self. So we learn about it first through reading, through hearing all the different ways it expresses itself. Then we create a template. Then we begin to wire ourselves to the meditations. Then we begin to practice and actualize it in the world. And that's what the book walks you through. Does that make sense?
Oh,
Since you,
totally. It's fabulous. It's fabulous. So we have a couple more questions.
okay.
And I'm gonna, well, I wanted to change the order, but they told us not to, so I'm going to do them in order. Can you speak further to the journey from anger to joy regarding your personal journey? So anger to joy.
Anger to joy. Yeah. Well, the first experience of joy that I remember around anger, actually, like healthy anger, right? Because the anger that was happening in my life was like the anything from like irritation to the full on, like you're getting into these like loud
Mm-hmm.
shouting matches with each other and
Mm,
not really feeling in control around that and then feeling awful afterwards. So even if there was the high of the release, the moment I said what I wanted to, it always had the hangover. I feel so bad and so
mm-hmm.
much shame. So there
Mm-hmm.
wasn't really joy in that. And then I remember coming into therapy and I was with an experiential therapist and she taught me about, she had this punching bag, in the corner of the room. And she had this thing called a hose, it was this piping. And she was like, we're going to come over and you're going to hit down. And of course, you can imagine I'm like looking at her being like, what are we talking about? And when is this over? And I'm going to leave. But
My
now,
therapist,
my,
yeah,
go ahead.
my therapist is like, here's the pillow, hit the pillow.
That's right. Hit
I'm
the
like,
pillow.
no, what?
Yeah.
I'm not gonna hit the pillow.
That's
No.
right. And then I have to tell you, when it came a day not that far off either, where I had two hoses and I had, both of them coming down and I was able to like
Mm,
feel everything that I felt coming out. And then afterwards, the pure and
mm,
sheer release
mm,
without any of the hangover.
mm,
There was no shame. The rules in the room were we don't harm each other, we don't harm the room, but here is a place where you get to
mm-hmm,
say and do and express all of it. And so one was just a sheer physical release of just joy, exhilaration. Talk about aliveness, right? I could feel the heat and the sweat. I
mm-hmm,
could feel my body.
mm-hmm.
Um, the other joy was realizing that, yes, much of what I came out of my mouth would never be said, but buried in it were truths. They
Yes.
were real no's in there around things like, I
Mm,
don't want this, right? Back to like, it is my choice, it is my body, it is my life. Like, this is what I want. And there were real like yeses and nos inside of it. As I say no to this, I'm also saying yes to being treated
mm,
this way.
mm,
Yes to making these choices, choosing these relationships, going forward in this way. And that there was joy in that, in just realizing this is my truth.
mm.
So the power in that, in a way, coming back.
Yes.
Um, Final part of real joy, and this, like I said, takes time, was then building the strength to take that into like, okay, so now I'm going to practice
Mm-hmm,
saying it to myself. This is what I need to say, notice what I need to say yes to.
mm-hmm.
And then in real life, taking
Yes.
the baby steps of like, okay, at work, I'm going to say, I decline. I decline working on a weekend when you're not going to pay me for it. And like we are overworking, overstressed. That was a huge one, right?
Mm-hmm,
Um, or just I decline taking calls past a certain time. I decline checking my email past a certain point. Like all of those declines, though they were scary, there was also
mm,
this like once it's happened and still have my job and life goes on. Or even sometimes declining later on things in relationships. Like I
mm-hmm.
decline being in a relationship if you're going to treat me in these ways.
Yes.
And it's a weird kind of joy, but the joy of like, even if you leave me, and some of the relationships left, there was this joy and this freedom on the side of like, and I survived it and I'll be
Mm-hmm.
okay, you
Yes.
know? So that's the journey from anger to joy, is you realize your anger is your power. Your anger is like talking to you
Mm,
when you know you don't have to ever take it out another human being, but you can actually take it out of you and you can translate it into firm and kind boundaries. You feel really free. And the biggest joy is, like I said, when I knew I could say no to what didn't serve me, I felt so free to say yes to so many things because I can stop it. I can go.
mm-hmm.
That's the ultimate freedom.
You decide.
Yeah, you decide. Yes, I love anger. I love anger work. I think it's really powerful. It's part of us. So that was the joy.
Mm, thank you.
Yeah.
Beautiful. The next question is, how do you hold the concept of joyous resilience in balance for need for dismantling the oppressive systems that result? in the need for resilient practices. In other words, we don't need all these resilient practices if we didn't have all this oppression. So we need to dismantle the oppression, and then also, how do we balance that we want, we want to build our resilience. In other words, somebody said it very simply before: you've got your foot on my neck. You keep calling me resilient. My neck keeps bending, and you keep calling me resilient.
That's right. That's right. And that is not, I mean, yeah, I think, and this one actually I would love both of us to share because I think you're going to have some really good things to offer too if you
Yeah.
want. I want to make sure I'm understanding the question right. I think one thing I'd say is I don't know if there ever has been a time where there has not been, because of human nature, oppression of some form of another, one human being oppressing another. So the need for resilience, like to be able to thrive inside of that, I think we've always had that need because we've always surviving
Mm-hmm.
all of these conditions back from when there's dinosaurs or big things outside of our cave and there's stressors to now, like there's always something pushing up against us. So our resilience is for ourselves, it's for our thriving long term.
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe if I'm asking the question right though, when it comes to systems of oppression, if the question is saying like, yeah, individual healing is not going to cut it for systems of
No,
oppression, we haven't
it's
actually
not.
talked about that yet. So I think that's good. That like, this is where, and the book talks about this, the book is geared more towards people beginning on this journey or maybe midterm. So maybe not so much the long term activists who already know that there is no
Mm-hmm.
way, there is no individual healing without collective healing and a shifting of the system. But the book is really nudging people to go, used to be like when I first started therapy, the first 8 years, I would always hear like, well, when you heal individually, then that changes the world. And I didn't quite know what it meant, but I was like, okay, like I guess it must somehow through me. And then I'm really happy, like about 7 years in, so like 13, 14 years ago, new teachers came into my life, teachers who were much more politicized and who were really
Mm-hmm.
working with movements and like systemic change. And we began talking about like, that's not actually so. Like you will have to deliberately pivot your healing towards systemic change. You'll have to start taking
Mm-hmm.
steps about the collective. It's not going to just happen organically. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's one of the big waking up that's happening in this country. And as of last year, right, with Me Too and Black Lives Matter and
Mm-hmm.
climate change, all of this, that yes, your individual healing work will help you, I hope, be more resilient to be able to have the bandwidth and space to
Mm-hmm.
then turn and go, there's voter suppression right now, and what are we going to do towards it so that things change? There's things happening in our communities, whether it's like through mutual aid societies, where it's like your neighbors having a very different experience than you. So let's begin to share resources to their organizations doing massive movement work around issues that are pulverizing us. Like, won't change climate change alone, won't change systemic racism alone. Sitting at home and make we feel overwhelmed, of course we do. But the point is to plug our energy back into our communities and organizations and movements and make changes on every level: educational, institutional, policy, advocacy, all of it. So this work, though, is not separate from that.
No,
It's
it's
just
not.
going, if you don't have this, it's really hard to do that because the pain is also there and it does have impact. If you do this without your intentionalizing it, you're not going to make change. But I hope that you do because we need to. We
Mm-hmm.
need to shift our attention over here because over here is affecting us. And that's back to the love again, our barriers to love. If you truly love, then you want it for your neighbor and you
Mm-hmm.
want it for each other. But I definitely I hope that you will also share, Monique, because this is the work you
Sure,
do.
sure,
So
sure.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I will keep it, sort of brief because we're nearing our end, but I could talk about this for literally days, but
Mm,
I will stay very focused. I'm going to use anti Black racism as the example. So, with anti Black racism, the problem actually is not a Black problem. Those of African descent and Black folks, are experiencing the symptoms of others' oppression and others' racism. So, it's actually others that need to do that work. So we can't dismantle anti-Black racism. Black people can't dismantle anti-Black racism. You can take all the Black people away, and you still have anti-Black racism because it comes out of the Industrial Revolution. It comes out of creating wanting to have free labor and free resources, exploitation, and wanting to be able to say, I have manifest destiny over that. I have manifest destiny over this country. for the indigenous and native people. We're here on unceded Ramaytush Ohlone land, which I want to acknowledge,
Yeah.
and we are guests. Um, and we are at the same time, uh, Manifest Destiny gave all this permission to this country, to the U.S. government, etc., to claim this land, claim these people, claim this space, claim these resources. They did the same thing in Africa, right? And they had to create narratives around both the indigenous people here and the indigenous people in Africa of inferiority, to say, you
Yes.
savages, you're lazy, you're stupid, you're dumb, you're inferior, you're pagans, you have no morals, you have no, you're lustful, you're loose, you're whatever, right? All those terrible things, and you're stupid, right?
Mhm.
And your gods are not real. You worship fake gods. And we're going to
Take
make up
everything away from you.
everything. So the
Your
unrootedness,
resilience.
yes, right.
Mm.
And I wanted to say, but that's another conversation, right? But for right now, you take all that away, and you use this term that Dr. Joy DeGruy calls cognitive dissonance, right? So you have to remove your cognitive dissonance that you are valuable, that I am valuable, that I am a human person with real feelings. And then you create systems and generations, the institutional, well, academia, all of academia, even CIS, of course, CIS is predominantly white institution. It is based on systemic racism and oppression and white supremacy and homophobia, transphobia, etc. Right? It's
Yes.
all sexism. It's all there. And the medical institution is based upon medical apartheid of cutting up black and brown bodies and deciding how things work, and oh, these people must not feel pain the way we do, because otherwise, if I touched you right here and I cut you open with no anesthetic, Anjali, if I cut you with no anesthetic and I saw you weeping and
Yes.
crying, and I
Yes.
said, well, I can't bear that, so she's not human. I'm going to take her
Right.
humanity away because I cannot see her humanity.
And
So,
my own humanity, right? Because then I've cut my own humanity in order not to see your own your humanity.
exactly, exactly. So, my liberation is bound up with your liberation. There is no way that we can get around that. And so, my joy comes from liberation. I can't be liberated if my joy comes at the expense of oppressing another. So, I guess that's how I would answer it.
Yeah.
There is no real joy if what I'm doing right now has consciousness of the oppression and pain and suffering of another.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Such a great conversation. I know we have, Jason is telling me we have a couple more questions. Um, so I think, and so I do want to invite us, as I said that, right? I feel grief. So I
Yeah,
want
I
to
see
acknowledge that
that.
I feel grief. I want to acknowledge that I see you feeling grief. And I want to acknowledge that it feels heavy in my body, and that I feel, the tightness in my throat and the burning of
Yes.
the tears. And I want to invite people to feel whatever they feel,
Yes.
because this is the way that we get liberation, right?
Yes.
Because we have to grieve this. All of us have to grieve it, the suffering.
Mm.
Um,
I may also say, Monique, like you said, we have to grieve it and then also take accountability for it. And like you said, with
that one.
anti-blackness, that one's not yours. Like yours is the grief, and sure, maybe ours of the grief since I'm not black, but ours is accountability, right? To go, I see your grief, and yes, I am moved to tears, and I want to feel those tears, but I do not want to be that one who sees the cut or does the cut. But even if I see the cut and I don't cry, that means that I'm a part of it.
Right.
And if we're listening, that's the point to go. So my liberation is tied with your liberation. My resilience journey is tied to yours. That means that part of my resilience journey is to wake up to this pain and then to begin to actively seek and look at
Mm,
where can I begin to do the work to change this, putting the onus on the one who's hurting.
yeah.
So I just want to name that. Like that's also where we feel resilience in the act of empowerment. Like I will agree with
Yes.
you. And there's also things that we can do.
Yes.
Um, and the doing of them can bring
Yes.
back a
And
sense of
that's
strength.
the healing, right? Is moving, is finding our sense of agency in
Yes.
that strength of movement, of saying, okay, I'm feeling today, and tomorrow I'm getting up, and
Yes.
I'm doing something. What am I doing? You
That's
know.
right. For me and for you,
Mhm.
right? To
Mhm.
that, like me and for you. And maybe in the case like you described of like someone who is such an activist, who is giving, yours might be more like for you and for me. Like some of us may have to go, I have to kind of include me, and some of us may have to go, actually, I've got a lot for me and I need to start doing the you.
Yes, exactly, exactly. Thank you. That's so insightful. You just appreciating your brilliance and your compassion.
I'm appreciating your heart and your honesty and your brilliance. Like you've taught, I'm like, there's a lot that you have just brought to everybody that I'm sure they're appreciating, and with such generosity and care. So thank you.
Thank you. I think we have, let's see.
Any time for one
Well,
more?
yeah, we have two questions. I'll let you choose which one you want to answer.
Oh no.
Or maybe you'll
Or
go for both.
both. We'll mix
Okay.
them.
Well, let's see. Well, I'll start with the first. It really feels like these are out of order, so I'm going to give you the second one first. Sorry, guys. What are ways people can be more compassionate to themselves?
Hmm. Okay, well, probably the simplest one is first starting where you are, accepting where you are. I mean, that to me, right? So, just even right now, breath, that's an act of compassion. Instead of I'm gone from myself, actually breathe and when, oh, you need something, let me pay attention to you. So, breath and bringing attention. Second one, I mean, really, it was in our first practice. When I bring my hand here, I'm going, you've got my attention and you've got my care.
Mm,
That's an act. Third one is I am interested and curious in you where you are, not where I think you should be, but just where are you right now? What's happening? And then fourth one, I might, even if it's a stretch, is to go, you get to be where you are. That's my love for you.
yes.
Just you get to be where you are. And even if where you are is like, I don't know if I can get to be where I am. Great. I love you right there. In your inability to take this, and I love you right there. I love you right there. I love you right there where you are. I'm going to meet you where you are. That is the beginning, and I would say probably also the end in some ways of compassion over and over. So just that muscle will get you a long, long way. Beyond that is like getting very curious. I don't think we're very curious with each other, right? We have our ideas pretty quickly. We don't really ask like, why? Tell me more. How come? What's happening? What do you need? Those questions are acts of compassion, mercy, grace to ourselves and each other.
Yes.
And then again, always back to, okay, this is where you are. I hear you. I'm with you. Tell me more. I want to understand you. Think about a world where we were doing that over and over. Because I want to deeply understand you so that I can care for you.
Yes. Yes, yes, yes.
Who would not start to bloom like your beautiful orchids receiving that? You get to have your emotions. I want to help you learn how to express your emotions.
And we can say that to ourselves, right? We can say
all
of
of
those
this
things
is from
to
ourselves. Oh, thank you for yes. All of this is from ourselves. Majority from ourselves. And of course, doing it in relationship is how it can get wired in, but it's there, it's inside of us, and you can go such a long way giving it to yourself. So yes, all of this is within ourselves.
Thank you. So this last question, which builds on this, which is, what does joy feel like for you in your body? Can you describe how you experience it and recognize it? And I think this is really important, like recognizing it. Oh, that's what that is.
That's right. That's
so what
right.
does it feel like, and what is it? How do I recognize it?
Totally, totally. I would love to hear yours too if you're open. I once wrote a poem on this, the creative art forms I like. It feels like water. It feels like a river. It feels like when it's to happen, like it feels like flow. Sometimes like warm drops, like a trickle, and sometimes really like this, like kind of like melting honey, like it's liquid golden warm river that's flowing through me. Heat. It feels like a smile. It feels like my heart kind of opening. It feels like basking. I want to just stay here. And it has a huge spectrum, but that's one of the ways that I feel that it feels like being here and really appreciating what is in the here and now. Yeah. Yeah. Feels like love.
Feels like love.
Feels like love.
Yeah. And love for ourselves, and then bigger, way bigger, in eternal. Um, alchemical, transformative. It transforms us and transforms the world and connects us to all things. Um,
Yes, contagious. I would say it feels contagious. Like when I am
mhm,
in that, I do know that I transmit that. I think it is contagious in that we are all
mhm,
connected. We are bigger than ourselves.
mhm,
I think it changes things. It changes the day, changes what's coming towards me. It's magic.
mhm,
And to be clear, the one way I felt joy today is I just sat and I saw this one tulip that came out today because I've been
mhm,
planting tulips, and I was just in that, and that was joy. So it's also can be very
mhm.
simple, you know.
Very
I mean,
simple.
yeah, I feel joy. I asked to
Mhm,
feel joy in this conversation. I feel
mhm,
joy, and I feel so moved, Monique, by how you've shown up so openly, and I feel joy that I get to meet this new person and have this conversation. It's incredible, and all these people are listening. So it feels
likewise.
like appreciation.
It does. I think I cultivate it sometimes by gratitude.
Yes.
So I start with gratitude. Like yesterday or today, one of these days, I just opened up my phone and I was telling somebody that I was grateful for them. And I said, oh, I don't tell enough people I'm grateful for them. And I started sending text messages to everybody. I'm so grateful for you. I appreciate you so much. Thank you. And
Oh,
I felt better. I felt joyful. I had a great day.
that's
So we
right.
can cultivate it in those spaces, but it's also like I think there's some safety there, right? And so there's some safety in it. And I remember my experience of joy that I always seem to go back to are two things. One is driving in the car with my mom with the radio on,
Uh,
radio guys, and
yeah.
the window rolled down because I'm old. The window rolled down and the sun, and
I
singing,
love that.
and
Yes.
just singing together, singing, being together,
Being together.
moving through the wind and time and space and just feeling it and vibing, right? Vibe, the
Absolutely.
vibration,
Playing.
and playing, our
You're
voice,
playing.
that. And then the moments of just being in the sunshine when you can sit and see
Yes.
something beautiful,
Yes.
the ocean, the beach, the wave, the tulip, the orchid, feel the sun,
Yes.
and allow that to transcend us into this place of just quiet joy. So those are some thoughts I have about what joy feels like for me. And I hope, as the audience, I really hope you go on to the Facebook and you tell people what joy feels like for you,
Yes.
and and you tell
Tag
Anjali,
me. I'm like,
and
yeah.
you know
Tag me.
text us, let us know somehow
Yes.
what does joy feel like for you. How are you transcending your anger? We would love to hear, I'm sure, right?
Yes, have the
Let
conversation in your homes, on your dinner tables, on your Zoom parties. Think about what we would give if that was a
mm-hmm.
conversation. What
Yes.
does joy feel like? How are you accessing it?
Mm-hmm.
Also, just want to say, like, all the simple moments you mentioned. Like, it's so simple
Mm-hmm.
in a culture that tells us it's so big and so far away and all of that, and then it's right there when the sun comes out and you get to sit in it. It's right there, and I think that is universal. I think if we
Mm-hmm.
shared them, they
Mm-hmm.
would end up being really universal, and that we need to
Mm-hmm.
remember that, like, it's right there for us. No one else has that power to take that from us. We have the
No,
power to take it back by just remembering and learning more about what gives us that,
that's right.
and then intentionally practicing it, which would be my
Mm-hmm.
wish for whoever's listening, is like
Yeah.
just centering, being your day, like what would give me joy today, one thing, and I am going to purposefully go towards it. That changes many things.
Yeah. Yeah. And so my last thought, and then I'll have you give your last thought, is again, I want to start with I finish with what I opened with. I am choosing joy, period. I am choosing joy. I'm consciously choosing joy every moment. So I want to invite us all to choose joy, to get the book, to
Mhm.
stay in contact with us, and to just um, live your best life, y'all. You know,
Yeah, for you, for your ancestors, and for our descendants, and for each other right now. We all really deserve as much joy as we can manifest.
we
Thank you.
do.
Thank
We
you so
do.
much.
Is there anything last that you want to say? Last that you want to say?
Gosh, that felt like a really good place to close, actually. Yeah, just choose joy, take care of you, choose love, and know that it's more than possible. It's inside. It's
Mm,
inside. And then share it.
Mm. Choose
That's good.
joy, choose love. It's inside and share. Thank you so much, Anjali.
Thank you. Thank you,
Mhm.
everybody.
Thank
So
you,
much
everybody.
love. So much love.
Thank you all so much for attending this evening. We hope you will join us for more of our upcoming talks and workshops. This conversation was recorded, so if you would like to watch it again or share it with your community, it will be available on our YouTube channel at this same link and on our Facebook page. We will also feature this talk on our podcast, which you can find at www.ciispod.com or by searching CIIS Public Programs on your favorite podcast app. Thanks again for joining us and have a wonderful evening.